In this video, we're going to demonstrate how easy it is to create detailed maintenance service agreements for mechanical contractors. So let's get started. There are many different ways you can collect equipment records from your customers. You can use the Quadra mobile app, which will allow you to search for your customers. You can search on location, any street number, city, equipment ID, serial number. When you press search, it's saying it's found 2 customers. So I select the customers that it's found, and I see it's for Irwin Industries, and there's got 2 locations. So I'm going to pick the 1 location, and I can see what equipment records I already have on file for that customer. I can see there's 3 there. I could update them, or I could just add another one if I'm on site. Put a description in. I can identify this is going to be a package AC unit, a 20-ton. Select the equipment type. Which again, it's just going to automatically pick through a list. Put the location where it's at within the facility. And I can put in any other detail that I want. I could take pictures of the equipment records, plug in a serial number as a reference, identify the details, say that this is a train unit, pulls for the default, and again, I can install dates, anything else I wanted to. Then I'm just going to add that equipment record. So that's automatically just added that equipment record back to the system, and it's now ready to be added to a maintenance contract. So let's look at the other way you can do it. So I'm just going to log into the maintenance service contract software. I'm going to just go ahead and create a new contract, make it a service contract for this Laurier Place. Customer was Irwin, and it automatically looks and pulls up the correct account. And I look for the address. And see that there's 2 addresses there, so I'm going to select the Laurier address, pulls through the details. I'm just going to now put a contract start date in. Let's do this one for May 1st, and let's make it a 1-year contract, so we'll go to May 31st of 2021. And then it's got all the additional details that I want to put in there. And then you can see when I pull up that customer, those are those 4 pieces of equipment that we saw from the mobile app, and we can see some details in it. I could also just go ahead and add another piece of equipment through the service contract module. So I'm just going to call this one a screw chiller, let's say. Again, put in a description. I can put in a quantity, let's say there's 2 of them. Again, I pick the equipment type, which is critical. Specify it's a chiller type. Again, manufacturer, if I wanted to, make, model, serial. I can put as much detail as I need to in here. Specify the location, it's in the utility room. Great, so I'm just going to save that. Now you can see that it's added those 2 equipment records. Okay. The other option I have is I can simply just import from an Excel file. So here's our Excel template. I've got 30 or so pieces of equipment listed in here. Got drop down so I get the specific equipment types. Once I've collected all the information, I just click the Create CSV report, and then that file is ready to be imported. So I'm just going to choose the file, and there's the file. That's a CSV file that was saved. Select that. I'm going to create manufacturer and models if they don't exist already. And saying, all right, I've got 30 or so new equipment records that are going to be created. If it was an existing equipment record, it wouldn't include it. And I've just then imported those 30 equipment records. And it's got all the associated detail with it that I needed from the file, belts, filters, etc. And I've just got those 30 pieces of equipment ready to go. Now I can look at what material we generally have for this type of equipment. So this has identified that these types of material have been used in the past. So I'm going to select those 2, the 1 belt and the 1 filter, and add those to the contract. And I'm just going to go ahead and add these other items to this particular contract. And then we can include travel time. So this will be from your service site to the customer's location. So it's estimating it's going to be just a little over an hour return trip. I'm just going to set that to be an hour. And then we just go ahead and that'll get every time we do a service to that particular customer site, we're going to add that 1 hour to the contract. And we can see the details as well, they're pulled in from the Excel sheet, the equipment details, the filters, belts, etc. All that stuff got pulled through. And now that I've got all those records on there, you can see the subtasking, or all the tasking that's associated with each equipment type. Now we're going to look at the tasking that gets associated. So based on each equipment type, we've got a default set of tasking that's going to automatically be pulled through. And on the tasking, we identify how long each task takes. So that rolls up into the total number of hours we're anticipating for this particular contract. We can see the task description, the hours, and you can see the months that the tasking is going to occur in. And with this grid, you have a lot of flexibility around being able to group your contract. So for example, if you wanted to remove certain tasks, you could do that. Or if you wanted to remove certain tasks from certain equipment records, you can do that. The idea is that you want to start removing and adjusting the scope, meaning removing tasks on the contract in order to either lower the price for your customer or if they expect more service to then add scope. In this case, I'm going to remove a task, and you can see how it's removing the hours from the contract. By selecting that do not include, it just lowers the total number of hours for that particular contract. I could then further refine this and change how I'm grouping the tasking. I'm going to just basically set it up so it's looking at all of the tasks. And I can see that in this case, for my correction, I'm not going to perform that. That's an emergency task. I've got 33 items. So if I remove it, you're going to see it's going to remove a lot of hours from this particular contract. And I can continue to further adjust this and possibly I can search for specific tasks to narrow my search down. And I'm going to just remove that emergency and diagnose task and say do not include that. And again, it should be a fairly significant reduction in the total number of hours for that particular contract. You've got a lot of other functionality that you have within this grid. I could go through and look at certain months, for instance, and say that in January, based on weather or other conditions, I need to add or increase a factor of the time it's going to take to perform those services. Maybe they're up on roofs and I have to clear snow. So I could add a 20% factor, and that's just going to simply add 20% to all those tasks in the month of January. I could also change the skill level and say that perhaps this work in January has to be performed after hours. So I'm going to switch it to be all an overtime rate. I could do that for everything in January. I could do it for individual tasks, and you can see how it's adjusting the value of that contract. And I can identify certain services based on this equipment type. I can go through and list out for some tasks. I can also go through and adjust the frequency with which they're going to occur. So I can look at this belt service and identify that it's going to only be, I'm going to switch its frequency to being every 3 months, and I'm going to say start that in January. And I can go ahead and adjust. It's just giving me a warning that's saying, hey, if you have any material items attached to that particular item, you're going to have to adjust those as well. So there it goes. It's just changed my frequency. And I can see what my total contract value is. I can go in and see the items now, all the belts and filters, etc., that would be on that particular contract. And this is where I could go in and be adding and adjusting the types of belts and filters that I might require. And then I can look at my bid summary page, which allows me to see, for each year what the contract value is going to be worth. I can see the total contract value. I can see what my gross margin is. I can adjust my gross margin. I can adjust the total contract value. I could adjust my commission percentage if I wanted to. And I can see what the total contract price is. The idea is that if you want to lower the cost of this contract for your clients, it's, what you should be doing is removing scope. So I can simply just go in and remove scope or change this, say that this isn't going to be done in overtime. The client says, no, you can actually do that in regular hours. And if I change it to regular hours, should reduce the contract value. But I'm not simply just removing items to lower the contract value. I'm actually, or lowering the dollars and keeping the scope the same. I'm actually going through and updating the contract by altering the scope of the agreement. That way you're going to protect the margins within your contracts so that you're not losing money on contracts because techs are doing the same amount of work that you've just contracted for less dollars. So again, you can go in and tweak and change the total contract price if you want, and that'll automatically adjust what your gross margin is based on that value. But you've not changed the scope, so it'll just adjust the margin. So you get a clear picture of what your margin is going to be on that contract based on how you're adjusting and tweaking it. Or, I could set a higher margin for some of these items, like my labor. I might set to 50% and leave my material at 45%, for instance. Or I could adjust the commission if that's how we want to lower the contract, so the salesperson is going to take a lower commission. Any of these items that are underscored can be tweaked and adjusted. And then once you've got it to the point where you're happy with it, the next step is to produce a document that you're going to be proud of, and one that your customers are going to really appreciate and like. And so these contracts or SAP agreements, you can have as many different SAP agreements as you like. I happen to like this particular one. It shows me a great summary of the contract. I just download it. It's downloaded in Word. It pulls through this nice template, and I've got sort of a introduction section, nice little letter at the front that's tweak and adjust if you want. But there's a nice executive summary that pulls through. And then I've got my equipment summary and tasking. Shows me all the equipment records that are going to be done. Shows me a calendar of the months that the services are going to be performed. And then for each one of the tasks, it shows me which months those are going to be included. It's also including those tasks that we've said do not include. So you can clearly show your customer and say, hey, we recommended that you did this, but we've removed that service so they don't come back on you later on. You can put special instructions in here. You could add some notes, customize it. You could also be adding pictures if you wanted to. You got lots of liberty and freedoms when you're working with a Word document. And then we go through and we've got our terms and conditions section. Keep all your T's and C's in there, and then your contract approvals. So and again, you could pick a variety of different formats. If you didn't like that one, you could pick a different one. You create your own. And then once you've got the agreement to the point that you've sent it off to the client, once the client sends back the approval, it's just a matter of going in and approving that quote, that contract. And then we have a variety of ways that you can get that contract into your scheduling and dispatching tool if you don't currently use one that's such as Key to Act. And that's it. Thanks for watching.